Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston, and I have a special guest. I'm going to have her introduce herself to you all.
Hello, my name is Rachelle McCloud, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to have you on because some of the major symptoms that people and are struggle with are the ones that you specialize in: anxiety, depression, and I really want to hear like the way that you work with people on working through them. I love how you empower people because sometimes I feel like we feel powerless, especially if we've been dealing with this for a long time. And so, like, that was the whole purpose of creating this podcast, is to just kind of help people learn about people that are empowering people, to give people hope. For you to be in this mental health field, I know it's not something that I grew up understanding or learning about until I was an adult. And I always love when I get to talk to therapists, because most therapists don't say that they decided they were going to be a therapist at a young age, or nor did they know about mental health. So I would love to hear what your journey was like
Yeah.
bringing in up into this field.
Yeah, I happened upon it by chance myself. And I grew up in a family that had lots of trauma, lots of really intense um, dysfunction, and it had been going on for quite a while, several generations. And so when I was born, they really tried to protect me from it. But here we have a bunch of traumatized people trying to protect me and help me and my brother become healthy people. And so I, gosh, grew up in that kind of environment. And so, with a lot of people who were mentally ill, depressed, traumatized, and I didn't know this at the time. I thought
Right.
we were all fine, and I was fine, and everyone just thought I was fabulous, and I was really positioned really well to be like the shiny, bright one of the family, the one that helps the family prove that it's not so traumatized.
Did
And
that feel
so
pressury for you to, did you know
I
like you
didn't
was,
know at the time.
oh, okay, okay.
But really what I have since learned is just that, yes, that it was tons of pressure.
Yeah.
And so it was also part of why I was able to achieve so much, is that I was very anxious, and that energy really helps you get a lot of stuff done, or it can really make you depressed. I was one of the ones that it's like I'm kind of neurotically doing things. And so I really had this undiagnosed obsessive compulsive disorder, and then complex childhood trauma. But I was excelling. I was doing great at school, top of my class. I was a top athlete. I ended up playing Division I volleyball in college, and I was just performing like a rock star. And so
Would you
nobody
say,
noticed
because on the surface, according to
on
American
the
standards, you
surface.
were thriving, and obviously, your family meant well, right? Because
Right.
I think it's important to acknowledge, kind of, when you're able to acknowledge what happened. It's not about blaming; it's just kind of understanding the environment kind of created that. And it sounds like part of your coping mechanism was pouring yourself into work and school and performing. Would you say that was part of like how you found
It
yourself
was like
coping a little bit?
it was like in high school, in middle school, I was terrified. I was
Yeah.
really terrified. I walked around in terror. And dissociated. I did not understand that at the time. All my people were dissociated and terrified. So and on the surface, they looked fine, right? So I'm just normal, regular human. But in these places, I got to, like, school was fun for me. It's like solving
Okay.
puzzles and riddles, and that was
Okay.
fun. So it's like there was a place of joy for me. Sports was a place I could just be myself. It
Oh,
wasn't, I had a lot of social delays because of the trauma, right?
yeah.
Parents, their job is to help children wire for wellness and really assemble this beautiful kit we have. And my people didn't have it assembled, and nor could they help me get it assembled. And so I had major delays. I could not put my thoughts and feelings into words. You don't need words playing volleyball, or
Right.
I could write. So it was, so it really started to become more apparent as I tried to engage more socially, that
Wow.
how delayed I was. Could not understand other people's thoughts or feelings. I didn't have empathy for others. I was missing social cues. Uh, it was a mess. It was a
Oh,
mess. But when I got to college, I just turned on and I was like, I wanted to do all of the socializing and the peopling, and that's really where my delays started showing up. I got through that and ended up getting my master's, and so I had a couple of mental health crises
no
there.
therapy up until this point?
No,
Oh my
no,
God.
and I'm also a therapist, and I have no idea I have an anxiety disorder,
Oh my God.
nor complex childhood trauma that I need to unpack.
Because you're thriving.
Because I'm
According,
trying. I'm
you got your
fabulous.
master's. You're doing it.
I'm doing it. So, but I was started doing therapy, and I was doing talk therapy, and I was using all my skills, and I was working with people with substance abuse disorders. And um, gosh, I was so mad at the results I was getting them. Like, they weren't healing, they weren't changing, they weren't growing. And I'm like, what? We're going to talk about this for the next 20 years? Like, they need help now. And so my department closed. And so all of us therapists got laid off. And here I am between jobs, and I'm pregnant, and I can't get a new job. And I'm mad at the field and everybody. And so my husband's like, why don't you stay home with the kids? And I'm like, bet. Okay. So I'm like, and I leave the mental health field kind of like throwing up some middle fingers.
Damn.
And so, and I'm like, I can't believe I have a whole degree in this. I'm home with my children. I pop out 2 more kids after that one. So I have 3 children under 3. And I can no longer outperform
No,
my
you
mental health
can't.
challenges.
Can I say something? So the way Rachel was talking about how she was thriving, it worked during the time of her. It allowed her to survive, get through some things. But what I noticed as we get older and more responsibility
That's right.
happens, the things that worked for us that helped us survive, it's like crippling sometimes. Oh my God.
Totally. My brain, I was so confused. I was so anxious. I couldn't solve basic problems. I couldn't, and I ended up in a massive mental health crisis. I thought it was a financial crisis. I thought it was a marriage crisis. I still it had no understanding, like, what's going on here is not right. And so my husband suggested, why don't you go like get an evaluation, which I didn't like them. So I wasn't trying to go to them, but I was like, okay, why not at this point?
I know. What else are you gonna do? You're struggling. You might as well.
Yeah. So I go and get diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder.
Dang.
And I'm like, my eyes are open. I'm just like looking back at my life, and I'm like, yeah. And it was here, and it was here. Oh, no wonder why I was so, and it just helped me understand what I was doing, why I was having these issues. And I didn't know then, but like my brain just was not solving problems. It was just looping, and it was expressing itself in obsessions. I was just obsessed about things.
Can you tell
And
people what OCD is? Just for
gosh, OCD is about anxiety building up, and you have a compulsion to do your safety thing, to turn off the internal alarms. And so that's why some people have checking. They need to check things. They leave the house. They need to check the stove for 3 times. And then they go to the car and they wait. I need to go check it again. I'm not sure. It's like they get to the car and all the anxiety builds up. And if you don't do the compulsion, the anxiety just becomes worse and worse and worse and builds until you go do the thing. And so you can get stuck in these loops of having to obey your survival system. And on the outside, it looks like you just keep checking things, but on the inside, it is very, very painful and massive. You're basically being held hostage by your survival system.
Mhm.
And so I was doing odd things at this point in my life when I was diagnosed. I was storing all these jars. I don't know what I was storing them for, but I had all these jars. I had to have all the same hangers and my clothes in this direction. And mind you, my whole life is like on fire, but my closet with my hangers were on point.
It's the little
So
things.
yeah. So I at that time I really started researching. I started learning, but I ended up encountering this woman who was an alternative healing practitioner, and she handed me the training DVD set for emotional freedom techniques. And so this woman really helped my son solve something in 3 days that the doctors were just like not solving and couldn't solve and didn't know how to solve by this little electromagnetic thing. So this woman was doing some weird stuff, and that was like very powerful. And I don't know. So if she had told me to stand on my head and count to 10 and that will change your life, I would have done so. So she gives me this. I watch the trainings. I'm laying in bed that night. I'm having racing thoughts. My mind is swirling. And something says, hey, why don't you try that intervention thing? And mind you, this intervention thing is weird. You're tapping on points of your body, which for me, I was mad at all those talk therapists. So it wasn't talk therapy. So I'm in. So I get this DVD thing out or this chart, and I start tapping on these points on my body I'm trying to follow the thing, and I need to go to bed. If I don't go to sleep, yeah, I'm all anxious about sleeping, and I take a yawn. I'm still tapping and I yawn, and then I'm like, oh, let me try it again. I think I know what I'm doing now. And I fall right to sleep. I didn't even
Wow.
finish it.
That wasn't the norm for you to be able to sleep like that?
I went from anxious, like enough to propel an airplane through the city,
Wow. Wow.
to asleep with now. I didn't choose to. I didn't. And so I woke up the next morning. I'm like, what else can I try this on?
Wow.
So every place I started finding symptoms of OCD, because that's what I was focused on, I
Yeah.
would just start and use this intervention. I would feel the need to go and do the thing. And so, but on my way to do the thing, I'm sitting here tapping on these points, and all of a sudden I don't need to do the thing anymore. And then I'm working on these places where I just feel so confused and I can't understand. And all of a sudden I have clarity and I understand. Like all of a sudden things are working. And I didn't know it at the time, but our brain has a very natural and awesome process for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. It's the brain resolves this. And it's very good at this, and it's very fast, which is why I got these results, because this intervention helps the brain right at the point where this process malfunctions. And so these interventions are fabulous, but it's really not about the intervention. It's about the brain needing to complete the work. It needs to be able to take fear and complete it, not just have fear come up and your survival system jump on it and send you into survival state. And so these interventions work in the native language of the survival system. And so instead of the survival system clamping down the healing process, all of a sudden it opens it up. And all of that beautiful communication, which is not so pleasant,
Right.
fear, anger, rage, frustration, hurt, all that stuff can now make its way from the body, from our subconscious mind, from all these places, and finally make it to its destination in the front of the brain, where then it mixes with our morals, our values, our skills, our resources, and our problem solving. So it's like this
Wow.
part of us, it's like we're getting the full report from our body for the first time ever, if in my case.
Yeah, I tell people the brain is one of the most underutilized places on our
Yes.
body, and if we're not engaged with it, it will do its own thing. And I just so people can, as we're talking about this anxiety that they struggle with, I say, your body was doing that to protect you. Like that's all it knows. It only knows the information that was available, and we haven't given it new information. So it sounds like you started to get more engaged into what was going on in your brain and naming these things. You was able to pay attention more deeply into what was going on.
Well, what I learned was I thought this EFT thing was the fabulous thing, right? And so I'm doing that. But then I take another training. I'm learning EMDR, the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and that does the same thing. And then I'm learning thought field therapy, and that does the same thing. And then I'm learning energy medicine, because now I'm like, what else is out there? So now I'm over in woo-woo land, and I'm just getting the same results. And so then I'm starting to learn about interpersonal neurobiology, brain function, and all of that stuff. And it just clicks that I'm really helping. My job as the therapist is to help the brain complete its work. It's these symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress are the exact point the brain is telling us, I don't know. I can't process this. And so really at that point, when those symptoms are surfacing, we can really open up the survival system and let that stuff complete. So let me give you an example of this. So our body is this big sensing organ. It's here to tell us what's going on outside of us, what's going on inside of us, and it needs to give these reports to the front of the brain. Like for instance, if you were walking down the hallway and you bumped into something, your shoulder would say, hey, ow, and it would send that information to the front of the brain. Your brain would be like, get the report. Oh, there's something there that hurts us. When we walk down, next time we're going to walk down a little bit to the left.
Right.
We're going to walk down, right? And so you would see a corrected behavior because
Yes.
the report was delivered.
Yes.
But what happens is that all of the information that in our body that registers as pain or as pleasure or neutral just zips through this communication loop from the body to the front of the brain. The stuff that registers as pain in our body, which is all the negative emotions plus social pain, emotional pain, mental pain, all of that stuff. That stuff activates the pain neurons. And then the survival system is like, oh no, that we're in danger. So we need to survival mode this. So it starts overriding our whole system, starts shutting down the thinking center. It starts shutting down things that we would normally have access to. And it shifts us into fight, flight, freeze, or faint, or fawn. And so when it shifts, makes that shift, that information, that pain information, that information that registers as pain doesn't make it to the front of the brain. And so we never get that side of the report. So there's things that have happened to us that were painful that our brain doesn't know anything about yet because it has never received the report. And this is why we have problems from, like, we have flashbacks to when we're 4, right? We have fears and irrational fears from when we were 10 and 8. And that's because we never got the full report. So the brain can't make a new way of understanding it, a new way of being with it, and to resolve any symptoms that happened, because it was like, I don't know. I don't understand this. So we're just going to make everything about it scary. And we're going to act like the whole thing is terrifying. When really, if it can just get that information through, it understands it and it will rewrite an accurate code instantly.
Wow. You do such a great job at explaining this. I have chills. And Rachel, I'm so fascinated by the brain. And it's unfortunate in school I didn't really learn about
Yeah,
all this stuff. As I did EMDR as a client. I was a client, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing stuff. Like why are we taking so long to do this
yeah,
work when it doesn't have to take so long?
that's
Which is
right.
where the empowerment comes into play.
That's
But
right.
for people, so a lot of people, including myself, have gone through life ignoring the pain, and
Mm-hmm.
then once I start to engage with it, it's hard. In this stage in my life, I look at that as, oh, what is my body trying to tell me? But when people are, if for people that are new to this, or working on trying to engage, and it's something they haven't done, like how do you help them through that process when this is new for them, of having to, recognize what's going on and not use distraction mechanisms, because it's
Yeah,
important to
that's
understand
right.
what's happening with us.
That's right. Well, our whole body is designed to get out of pain and avoid pain. So I really think it's important not to shame ourselves for avoiding or not avoiding the pain, because especially in my case, my family could not process pain. And so that system was not built in me to process pain, right? Shame shut all my people down. And it was like, oh, my mirroring neurons, I'm learning when shame comes, you're out, so we it's not wrong to avoid things. First, it's also not a healing strategy, and we're not going to grow. It's not how our brain it takes the symptoms. When our brain is resolving symptoms, it's also walking it through our process for growing and maturing. So if we can't get these symptoms through, we're also not getting that information through to mature it and grow it. So we're doing old patterns and we're doing old behaviors. And when people say, gosh, you're acting like such a child, yes, we actually are, because that stuff has not been
I
matured yet.
know.
And so what we really want to do, what I do with people, is I just do experiential stuff. Like when they can find a stressor and they can see their body becoming anxious, and they can use an intervention. I like to teach emotional freedom techniques first because it's one of the easiest ones to use. I also teach people EMDR, but like after they have some skills. But once they can see their brain take this anxiety and all of a sudden it leaves their body and they start relaxing and they feel better, and now they have new thoughts coming up and they have new insights and they have new solutions, it's like, what was that? Right. And like, that's the proper use of fear. Fear is not supposed to stay in our body and linger and linger and linger. It's a messenger. It has a message to deliver. It needs to deliver the message and go back to
Mhm,
work.
mhm,
Don't hang
mhm.
up here with your picketines,
Yeah,
right? and,
yeah.
and let us know. It's like, but it does that because it's not making it past the survival system. The survival system's like,
Mm, yeah.
and then it's getting worse. And it's like, and understand, this is a big thing to understand, is the survival system is not the thinking center. Does not respond to thoughts and words. It is not a reasoning center. It is not a thinking center. It's just danger, no danger, danger, no danger,
That's
pain,
it.
no pain. And so if its native language, its job is to keep the body alive. And so if the body is sending messages of distress, that could be from like 20 years ago,
Yes.
and all of a sudden it's sending that report up. It's like, I think you need this report right now. It's sending that up. The survival system is just going to read, there's pain. It's going to say, oh, no, you can't come in here. And so, but when we speak to the survival system in its native language, which is the body, it's the only
Mm-hmm.
thing it's paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, we're influencing it and we're sending it those messages, hey, you're safe. And it
Yeah.
opens up. And
Yeah.
that communication loop happens instantly because it's electrical and we're working with a nervous system. It's instant. But we already know this is true. We know that this is how you work with our system. We work with our survival system.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing when we have babies and they cry and we go to them and we're hugging them, rocking them. We are manually opening their healing, growing, and maturity process, right? By
Yeah.
influencing their survival system. They're hurt. Their body is sending messages of distress. It might be social pain. It
Mm-hmm.
might be emotional pain, mental
Mm-hmm.
pain, physical pain. But while the pain is running through their body, we're patting them and we're rocking them. The survival system listens to that. All of a sudden, the survival system's out of the way. And
Mm-hmm.
all of that information that happened, like my brother said something mean to me, is actually getting to the front of the brain. And then you'll notice
Yeah.
the child calms. And then they're more logical about it and they understand things and they go off to play. Done.
That's so true.
But if we don't intervene like that, it stays in their body. And a lot of times we have practices of talking to them. Say, instead of going and working their survival system, we'll say,
Yeah.
hey, calm down. He didn't mean it. But
Yeah.
that's information from the front of the brain, but that doesn't help this process complete. It doesn't help the child mature. It
Right.
doesn't help us do any of that stuff.
Right.
So that stuff with parent and child is very important. But when we're older, we don't have a parent running around rocking us and patting us, right? So we still want to, and what we'll do intuitive when we get stressed, we'll eat. That's the survival system. You're talking in the language of your survival system. All of a sudden, it will chill out. It will
Mm-hmm.
say, "Okay, we're relaxed, we're safe." Because
Yeah.
while the pain is happening, we're engaging the body in a safety mechanism. You don't eat when you're not safe. When you're running from the lions, you're not like, "Hold up, let me get a bag of ice cream or a bag of chips." That's
Mm-hmm.
not happening. So
Mm-hmm.
it understands that as a safety function. And so then we find ourselves addicted to food, but no, we actually needed to regulate our nervous system
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
And there's drinking, smoking, sex, all these things,
Relationships.
shopping,
Yeah.
social stuff, all that stuff is really engaging the survival system in some
Mm-hmm.
way or another. And so all of those can have some negative side effects.
Mm-hmm.
So here we can really use an intervention like emotional freedom techniques, thought field therapy, energy medicine, EMDR, and there's other ones, breath work. There's tons, right? As
Mm-hmm.
long as you find one that works for your survival system, that your survival
Mm-hmm.
system's like, oh, I know you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
willing to participate. I can receive
Yeah.
that information, and you can send it. You can use the body to send the messages of safety. All of a sudden, you're processing what's coming up, and when people feel that, you feel it in your body.
Yeah.
And I don't have to convince people, hey, you need to be tapping. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
what? It's
Yeah.
magic. I'm like, no, this is healthy brain function. This is
Yeah.
what your brain should be doing. It
Yeah.
just got overwhelmed and stopped doing it. And now we're just going to manually get in there and get that survival system out of the way because it's
Yeah.
overreactive now. It's afraid of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's registering as pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just need to hold it open. The brain will sort all this stuff out
It
and
will.
quickly.
Yeah, I love it. And when Rachel talked about, if you were to bump your shoulder and then next time you go, you adjust it, right? And so that's a prime example on why it's important because if our brain wasn't able to like, or even the foot of the bed or something, right? We make sure we don't bump our toe anymore. So we're adjusting. But if we were not doing that, we would keep bumping our toe or keep bumping
That's
our
right.
shoulder, right?
That's right. And that's what we see when we have these looping thoughts.
Yeah.
We have these racing thoughts, or we see patterns and cycles that we're not discontinuing, like generational cycles of
Yep.
dysfunction. Or
Yep.
maybe we've got some relationship dynamics that aren't healthy and we keep leaving relationships to start the new one, but it's the exact same cycle that we're
Yeah.
engaging with again. That's because your brain has not processed the
Yeah.
stuff it needs to process to make a new way of being.
That's good.
It's repeating function because it's saying, I need to get this processed. I need to understand this. I need to get this. And it's got its own intelligence. I really don't get mad at when I get mad when it happens to me, right? When it happens to me, I'm mad. But when I'm seeing my clients repeat things, I know that there's some material in there that's not processing.
Yep.
I don't see that they're just here and they just keep doing the same damn thing
Right.
because they're
Right.
dumb and they're stupid
I
and they never learn. No, actually, something in here there has never made it through your brain's learning process.
Exactly.
So there is a something is hindered in the learning process, and it's not anybody's fault. It has to do with how brains work and how and your and individual brain's ability to process something. And
Yes.
some people can process stuff that's super difficult. Some people can't. Some
Yeah.
people have stuff that's super simple that their
Yeah.
brain just can't do, that
Yeah.
everybody else's brain can do. And
Yeah.
and that's such a unique and various thing. And when I'm working with people, I'm looking for what's difficult for their brain.
Yeah.
Right. And the
Yeah.
more their brain gets practice with that very thing, the more their whole system wires to start processing that well.
Yes.
And now they have now that system, that process that was not built yet or was hurt or knocked offline because of some trauma, now it's up and running again. Now they have internal health and wellness, and they can carry more of their emotional load and process the things that happen in life and learn.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
a lot of times during post-traumatic stress work, all of a sudden they're shifting quickly into post-traumatic growth. They're catching up.
Wow.
Their relationships are deepening. They're becoming more healthy. They're leaving old patterns. It's a big growth period because now their brain can finally process years, decades, maybe even of
Mhm.
work. And because we do this stuff quickly, I really have people do this intensively.
Mhm.
I found that it takes about 120 to 300 hours of specific and targeted brain work to resolve a disorder of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress. And if we just did that in weekly sessions, it would take 2 to 6 years. And I'm not really for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I teach people these interventions and give them tasks. You
Mhm.
work on this task between
Mhm.
sessions, and I have them do that for 2 hours per day.
Mhm.
And then
That's
with me, they're working we're going deeper. We're using my advanced skills, and I keep teaching them more advanced skills, so that pretty soon they come tell me, I worked through this memory and this
wow.
one, and I got it processed, and this is what's happening now. And we just tackle this thing. And
That's
so because brains are trying to do this work anyway, we just dive in and help pretty
that's
intensely.
yeah, that's amazing. And this is why, I think you're gonna you're freeing a lot of people with them just hearing this, because we can be so hard on ourselves. And like
Yes,
Rachel is saying, like a lot of the mechanisms, whether it's food, shopping, sex, cigarettes, like whatever, like it was for survival. And I tell people that,
that's
and I
right.
say you have to have grace with yourself, because you did the best that you could with the information that you had. Once you
Literally.
put the cigarette in and you was able to breathe. Some people equate
That's right.
smoking to breathing.
That's right. They'll feel suffocated. Their nervous system will run the suffocation program. Oh, I know how to get her to help us regulate. Get the cigarette going.
Yeah,
Oh, she's not
yeah,
going to reach for it. You're going to resist. Okay, run the suffocation program. Run
yeah,
the nausea program so that she thinks she's going to throw up. Oh, and she's not. Let's make sure she throws up.
yeah.
Right? Like you don't like the survival system's kind of like gangster like in there. We have access to everything.
It really is.
We can resist for only so long, and that's what people think, that they're weak because they're like,
Mhm,
but you're
mhm.
being tortured from the inside out.
Yeah, and we
So,
can't
and when
see it
you
in real
do the
time.
thing, all of a sudden it relaxes and it backs off of you.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And I'm
So
assuming you're super passionate about this, because I'm grateful for you for sharing like your journey, but this is why you're super passionate about teaching people and empowering people. I
yeah,
always say we live in a country that doesn't want us to be well, because it benefits off of our pain. And the more we learn and empower ourselves, the more we can. We don't have to stay in survival mode. A lot of medical issues, inflammation,
totally.
a lot of things that we're experiencing inside is because of all the things that are just being stuck in our
That's
body.
right. That's so true. It's
Yeah.
so true. And I really, I love this work. I love this work specifically because it gets people out of pain, anxiety, distress so fast. And it gives them a sense of control over their life again. And like they
Yeah.
can trust themselves to go out in the world, to participate in
Yeah.
relationships, to parent. And I really love when I'm working with, I have a special passion for generational trauma,
Yeah.
and I'm working with parents and people, and all of a sudden they're taking apart their generational patterns. All of a sudden they're saying new things to their children that's helping their children wire for health,
Yeah.
and that they're not causing more nervous system dysregulation. And if they do, they're like, oh, I know what I just did. Let me fix that. Let me jump in here and
Yeah.
help my kid. And
Yeah.
it's like, and all of a sudden you see the kid just start being well just because I'm working with mama or daddy.
Mhm.
And that's really, really cool. That's really rare
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the kids get our nervous system. They
They
don't
do.
get what we say or what we're doing. They're practicing who we are, our
Mhm.
nervous system.
Mhm.
And so it's like if our nervous system's all gunked up with trauma, we're
Yeah.
passing that to them, which is really
Yeah.
what I was experiencing. Because I'm like, none of this stuff ever happened to me. What do you
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And it's not like it's intentional. It
No.
happens. It's the environment. And I always tell parents, the best thing you can do is like take care of yourself first. Like that's the best thing you can do. And
Right.
it's hard to parent from a place of anxiety and pain and stress.
Yes.
So that's really good.
Yeah.
I love that. Tell people about, because let's say people are listening to this and it's like, this sounds amazing. I've never heard of it. How could they work with you? Because you're also an emotional wellness coach, which
Yeah.
means you can work with people all over, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I have a therapy practice in Oregon, but I'm only licensed there. So I wanted to make this available to people everywhere. I have workshops. I have a curriculum. I have an 8-part curriculum for resolving disorders of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. So it's what I've seen people need to do to resolve disorders, not just make symptoms stop, but
Yeah.
also to build in the wiring that never was built in the first place, or that's no longer functioning. So when I think of wellness, I need let's not just make the pain stop. Let's make sure the system, your brain and your mind and body can continually make wellness from the inside out and on a subconscious program. So you don't have to think about it. It's just doing it. Right.
Yeah.
That's really where we want to be. So I have a program for that. And I also have an intensive coaching program where I walk people through that online program intensively, meeting in small groups for 2 times a week, 2 hours at a time. And we just go through symptom after symptom after symptom.
Wow.
So
That's
I just give them
amazing.
the support and accountability, and also I'm really having them help themselves.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have another pair of eyes, especially I've seen lots of brains and lots of symptoms and have helped many different brains work through things in different ways. So it's nice to have that extra set of eyes and understanding.
And that's because as people are helping themselves, like they realize they don't have to sit in front of Rachel to do this work, right?
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. They'll
I
be able
have
to do it in real
clients who have
time.
done my self-study program and they email me. They're just like, I had no idea. This is awesome. This is what I'm learning. This is what I'm learning. This is what I'm not
Yeah.
doing this anymore. And I get to get these little celebration pages. And it's exactly what brains should be doing. And so
Yeah.
I get to like celebrate back with them. I've never met them.
Oh my gosh, that's
And they're just the kind
amazing.
of people that just either wouldn't work with a therapist, which I totally get them. I
I
would
totally get
never.
it. I'm a therapist and I say I understand. I tell people that all the time.
Now I like to play with therapists. I'm like, if there's something coming up, especially marriage or like outside my field, I'm like, to become an expert here would take a really long time. Like, can I hack your database?
Mhm.
See what, or parenting, or I love all these great minds, but I'm not, we don't have to be in a dependent place with our own inner world and our own
Yeah.
inner workings and sometimes people are going to marriage therapists or family therapists or all these places and they're in so much nervous system distress they can't do the learning of it. They can't
I
actually
know.
get the material through
I
this
know.
healing process. So it's really, this work is so fundamental.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then after you do this, it's like the whole world opens up. All of a sudden,
I
you're
know.
neurologically like in PTSD, brain is not even working the same as somebody who's not in PTSD or in a flashback or having these symptoms. That brain is entirely different. And we want to take this traumatized brain function and really walk it through its path to creating wellness and being in a state that is like on an even playing ground with the rest of
Mhm.
the world.
Mhm. Mhm. That's so good. And I'm somebody who was a recipient of one of the practices that Rachel was talking about, EMDR as rapid eye movement, and it just definitely allowed me to get more grounded and be present. And I mean, luckily I had a good therapist that referred me there, and I just think that a lot of these things that Rachel are talking about and doing needs to be more mainstreamed. And unfortunately, it's not a lot of people that specialize
True.
in what you do.
It's true.
Trying to find when I recommend EMDR, looking for them is really hard. So the fact that you are sharing your gift with all of my audience and you have self-guided programs and
Mhm.
this is really amazing. And I appreciate you for coming on to share all
Thank
of these
you.
things
Thanks
with
for having
people.
me. And,
Yeah.
and I do want to say that I teach these methods for free. these interventions on my email list. So if you jump on there, I start sending you, try this, look at this video, try
Yeah.
that intervention. And really, people can do so much of their own healing work. And if they have more complex issues and they're like, wait, I want to, like, I know this works. Now I want to put it to use and I want to do some specific and targeted work to
Yeah.
clear up this in my life and this and this and this. That's really a time when it's like, okay, let's talk about the online self-study program and those sorts of things.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah.
And then tell people how they can reach you. Like, what's your
Yeah.
website?
Yeah, my website is rachelmccloud.com, and my name's spelled like Rachelle up there, so you can see that here. But it's RachelMcCloud.com. And everything's there. And I teach and teach and teach on there. And then I really want you to get to work, because there is no amount of explaining that's going to show you what
Right.
this brain function is like until you experience from the inside out.
Right, right,
When you
right.
when you when you like, I had a symptom, I don't have a symptom. That's really when you're like, oh, okay, here we go. I wonder if it would do
Yeah.
this. Yes. And once that wondering and that stuff starts kicking up, that's really where the magic happens. So
And being able to, because as someone who can recognize when I'm feeling anxious, and I have all of these different things that I'm able to do to feel empowered, and
yes.
it just, life feels different than it did before, when I just felt like life was happening to
Yes.
me, which most people unfortunately like just succumb to that. But being able to have something that's readily available is like amazing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
truly believe that.
Yes. And these interventions take anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes.
Mhm.
And they're incredibly, incredibly powerful for the survival system. And if we can get that survival system to play nice with everybody, our whole brain, our whole body just starts being able to do what it needs to be doing for us.
Yeah. Rachel, thank you so much. Is
Thank you
there
for
any last
having
words you
me.
want to tell my people before you go?
No, just like, gosh, go for the gusto, heal, and just play with your brain.
Yeah.
Try, see what's going on. Help this process out. Have these conversations with your survival system in its native language and see what happens.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having me.